Welcome to Critical Junction, Episode 8. I'm Mark.
I am Luke.
I'm Jill.
And today we're talking about fake news. So I think to start off with kind of a funny story here, but the day after Donald Trump's inauguration, Sean Spicer was talking about the amount of people that attended the inauguration, and he completely exaggerated the number of people who were actually there. And Kellyanne Conway, the senior White House aide, told NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday that Spicer had, quote, merely been offering alternative facts, a phrase that was received with widespread astonishment, needless to say. So yeah, that's from an article in The Guardian that came out today, I believe. So I guess we'll take it from there. With the advent of the Trump White House, facts are becoming less and less important and being replaced by sheer emotional reactions and what other people might consider to be fake news. So, Jill, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to start off with.
No, just the idea that we're in like a post-truth society, or that we're in a post-truth era or a post-fact era.
I think a post-fact or post-truth era would be a good way of describing it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not bringing it up to say that to actually espouse that opinion. That concept, like, I'm not coming up with it. I've heard it somewhere else, and I just don't get it, because to me it just sounds like people are coming up with ways to justify their alternative facts, their alt facts.
Alt facts that seem to be not facts.
Yeah.
Is what it seems to be. Like, basically you can just say alt and then lie, kind of thing. Like, what are they trying to say with this alt fact thing? Like, how were they suggesting that was in any way a fact?
I don't even know. I think she was trying to present it as alternative numbers, or like an alternative opinion of what actually happened. But like, if you're spouting bullshit, it's still bullshit regardless of what you call it, right? Mm-hmm. There were a certain amount of people who attended the inauguration, and no matter how you spin that, the number won't change. So I don't. It's completely ridiculous.
I mean, You've probably seen the picture comparing this inauguration with the last inauguration.
Yeah, it looked like he had about like a third of the population.
At max. Yeah. And there's one of the pictures actually that they were sharing around social media that had a split screen of the former inauguration and this one, and they actually used the more favorable half of the picture, because if you look at the full picture of Trump's inauguration, everybody seems to be gathered towards the right half of the what do they call it, the esplanade, or not the esplanade.
Oh, they were afraid to even go on the left.
The mall. Yeah.
They were afraid to go to the left of the mall. Too left. That was too left for them.
Too left.
That must be what it was.
That's pretty good.
I can't even turn that way. No, too much. Okay, so alt facts. So now, okay, so what is post-truth? What are they suggesting this? Because I have heard this in the media. Mm-hmm. This post-truth time. Mm-hmm. What I took that to mean was that, and I don't know if this is what they mean by it, but that we don't know what we can trust anymore, and that is correct.
Well, yeah, I think
what do we trust?
I think that's part of the problem, is that people are starting to lose faith in traditional media, and as a result of that, they're not accepting anything the media says as being factual anymore. But the difference between fake news sites and what people like Kellyanne Conway firing off her bullshit mouth is the traditional media have fact checkers who verify the information, or at least the legitimate media sources are supposed to have fact checkers who go through the stories that they're writing before publication, so that whatever they put out there is as accurate as possible. And a lot of people, I don't even know how this started or why it's become a thing, but they're no longer trusting that as a source of information. Meanwhile, they're starting to trust things like Breitbart News, who's just, full of shit.
Yeah. There's a lot of projecting going on there, because we all know how loose Breitbart is with the facts. The strange thing to me is they're trying to say that a news source that can be shown to have a bias of any kind can just be dismissed as fake. That's fake news. Mm-hmm. Whereas the what started out as fake news was, the obvious sense of fake news, meaning news that's wholly, like whole cloth, just
like satire or something like that. Like a satire site would be.
Well, no,
that's not fake news.
That's not quite fake news. I mean, I guess before fake news was fake news, as we're talking about it now, people would call like The Onion fake news, right?
Yeah.
And then other people would call The Daily Show fake news, but even that was actually starting to stretch and distort the idea of fake news, and it was kind of, I think that might have been like a right-wing apologist move to discredit what was being reported humorously but factually, because they were looking at real events, real political events or media material, and they were taking the real stuff, but they were just laughing at it, right? Mm-hmm. or pointing out the hypocrisy in it. And so while it's satirical and humorous, it's not fake, but they pass it off as fake. And I think that's exactly what's happening with the big mainstream media, or with what the right-wing media is doing to mainstream media. Mm-hmm. They're conflating or equivocating about bias and just complete falsehood.
Right. Yeah. Well, every media outlet has a bias, right? That's a certainty. But I think what's happening now is that the right wing especially is exaggerating the bias and saying that we can't believe anything they're saying because they're liberal media, and obviously they're just going to report on their point of view, and we can't trust them because of that, right? And I think that they're stoking those flames of conflict and divisiveness for the sake of advancing their own goals and advancing their own point of view, to the detriment of actual facts, I think. And these days, I think people, what's happening is we're accepting what otherwise could have been considered at one point to be tabloid news as borderline acceptable, because people are not fact-checking anymore. And they're just accepting whatever the right-wing fake news media sites are publishing as factual because it's supporting their point of view.
So, what do you think about this the scandal that came up just the day before the inauguration, the Pissgate, where BuzzFeed had just published this report that had been circulating among the intelligence community and some key political figures. I think actually John McCain, the report had come to John McCain, and John McCain was one of the ones that turned it over to to either the FBI or the CIA to have them vet it, or because it's a thing that came to him, and apparently the person who wrote up the report is an intelligence agent with MI6 in England.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was the same MI6 agent who broke. What was that? It was another major story that he was involved with, right?
Yeah, he's not an unknown.
No,
he's not like
a credible source. I just think it was kind of funny that BuzzFeed, of all places, was one of the sources that broke the story to begin with. Like, why is BuzzFeed suddenly considered a mainstream media source?
Yeah, well, the thing is, this report apparently was known to a lot of the media and a lot of the mainstream news, and had been referred to in the media as early as last summer, I think. And so the mainstream media, they were aware of it, but they weren't publishing it because it couldn't be confirmed that the content of it was they couldn't corroborate the content of it, even though even though they could at least verify the sources of it and the fact that it exists,
Right.
and that it exists with these irrelevant figures, right? The intelligence community, and so that led to this difference there, where BuzzFeed, they were criticized for publishing the report even though it couldn't be vetted, and CNN were criticized for talking about the report,
Right.
but not publishing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that speaks to like the big difference there in like between a big credible kind of mainstream media outfit and a tabloid type of outfit, which BuzzFeed, I think, there proves that they are more on the side of. CNN, at least, I mean, as much as we complain about the bias of CNN or just the kind of cynical ratings grab kind of thing of CNN, where they want to try to play both sides or pretend that they're unbiased.
Like news in general has become more and more sensationalized. Like it's like they need to get the ratings, and so now it's more about entertaining.
Right. Would you say that that's more true of American journalism, or would you say it's a universal constant now? Because when I'm watching, like CBC Newsnet or whatever, that to me just seems like a normal news outlet compared to like Fox News or CNN, where, like you were saying, Luke, it's all about like ratings grabbing and just quick attention grabbing clips to bring in more viewership.
I think it is more severe in the States than in Canada, for example. Like, I'm thinking of how interested we are in politicians and their bedroom stuff in the States, and all over the news, like as soon as something happens with his penis, we know about it, kind of thing. Whereas in Canada, I remember hearing about, Harper's wife dating the RCMP officer that used to watch Sussex, and that never came into Canadian media at all. Yet it seemed to be very common knowledge. I don't know if you guys knew about that.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I never even heard of that.
Yeah, that story was going around, and it seemed to be just common knowledge with a lot of civil servants.
Wow, really?
I don't know how. I remember talking to Nat, who we both used to work with, and she's all like, yeah, I knew about that. Yeah, of course, Harper's wife is a lesbian dating like her former RCMP officer that used to watch Sussex and lives with her, and that's her girlfriend, and they're not really married, and it's all, it's all staged and stuff like that. And
okay, I just want to state for the record that this is unverified.
But that's the thing.
But I will be verifying.
But this may be stemming from Pierre Trudeau and just our ethics on the bedroom and stuff like that, right? We stay away from that stuff. That's not news to us. We kind of just leave that alone, sort of thing. But I mean, I see evidence too of just general news in Canada being. I mean, all news is fake to an extent, right? They're all supporting their agenda, right? They're owned by who's owning the newspapers, who's owning the news channels and stuff like that. Like, I've seen news stories where I've seen the event, and then I go home to watch the news, and it's not the truth is not reported there, or at least they're only reporting a specific truth. Let's say
partial truths.
Like I'm thinking
hiding other truths.
I'm thinking of watching students get beaten by riot cops, and in a completely non-violent situation where there was only peace there, and there was no reason for even riot cops to be there. And then you go home and read the story, and all they're talking about is how much the students are caught.
Protests, yeah.
It's a violent protest, and the students are costing society so much money, which is not the case. It's bullshit. It's only a perceived truth there. So each one has an agenda. Like this is what Michel Foucault was talking about when he's saying it's about power relations and stuff like that. Like there's someone that's using news to get their story across to like as propaganda in a sense.
Well, yeah, and I think especially now, it's extremely important for us to maintain an independent media that's as free from bias as possible, because what we're going to end up seeing, and what we've already started seeing just based on this one incident alone that I was quoting earlier, is the state making use of the media in order to further propagate their agenda, right? That was, like I said before in a previous episode, I hate playing this card and I hate making the comparison to Nazi Germany, but we're seeing we're seeing signs of that, right? We're seeing the White House press staff using the media in order to further the message that they want the public to know about.
The propaganda.
Right. They're using it as a propaganda machine. Like saying that we saw record numbers at the inauguration like we've never seen before. No, it's not true. That's a simple falsehood. Mm-hmm. And presenting it as an alternative fact.
Alternative to fact.
Right.
It's like there's a word missing.
It's a lie. The proper word for it is a lie. They lied on their first day. So we're just going to keep seeing more of that. We're going to keep seeing more lies that they're going to try to obfuscate by calling it things like alternative facts or a difference of opinion, or they're going to call it a liberal bias in the media. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it does bring up that idea that we just can't trust anything. Like, we can't possibly trust anything they can possibly give us. Like, they're blatantly lying at this point. Like, it's not even hidden.
Like, they are blatantly lying, and I think that it remains... it falls squarely on us to fact check things, but most people are too lazy to do that kind of work. Yeah, they'll just.
It's not even necessarily laziness, though. Actually, that's something else that has kind of bothered me a little bit. Is that the argument can too easily be dismissed by people for whom the post-fact state of affairs is actually a boon or is beneficial. They can dismiss people who just say that people are too lazy to fact check. They can dismiss that as elitist or as I don't know, snobbish or something like that. But on another level, it's just a fact that people's attention is a limited commodity, right? So everybody has their own life with their own things going on, and they spend their time on a certain set of priorities.
Well,
and for some people more than others, politics or the news, even though it affects everybody pretty much equally, for some people more than others, it's of interest or it's not of interest because they have other things that are even more immediately relevant to their lives.
Well, maybe I misspoke there. I'm like, instead of saying that people are too lazy to fact check, they don't either have the time to do it or they're simply not that invested in the story to do the fact checking.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why, like we were saying earlier, traditionally the media is supposed to have fact checkers to do that job for us. And we're inherently supposed to take them at their word that they've done the research for us and they've fact-checked everything before releasing it.
So once again, we are, regardless, just believing. We're listening and believing. Like, let's say, let's look at the news of the past or whatever. Mm-hmm. We were more likely to believe it back then. Mm-hmm. It more likely seemed like truth.
Right.
They were hiding their manipulation of the truth more.
I think there's always been an aspect of truth manipulation in the media.
For sure.
Like that, if you compare headlines from region to region on any given issue, it will be different. Or like if you compare headlines from one news outlet from another, their biases will immediately show.
Yeah.
Like if you compare, I don't know, the Sun to the National Post, you're going to have conflicting headlines, I guess. But again, that's the way media bias operates.
But isn't there like a limit on how much you can be massaging the truth before you're just making something up outright, before it's just a lie? It's like the opposite of the truth or something. It seems to me that yes, there's a lot of bias and there's a lot of massaging and priming with your own perspective on a certain fact, and you'll get priming from different sides of the issue. But when it comes to just making up lies, those are more verifiable, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you'd think
those would be something that can be corroborated, or if you can't corroborate it, then you can't report it as fact without I guess, at least admitting that it's uncorroborated, which, for example, CNN did when they reported on the Pissgate report.
Right. Well, how much do you think fake news or uncorroborated information led to Donald Trump's election?
A lot. I think it was huge.
Huge.
Yeah. I think what's it called? Social media played a huge role in just shaping the attitudes of the less partisan people, or those people that you call undecideds, right up until the election, or independents, things like that. People that don't want to say that they're just straight up Republican.
Right. Yeah, because while we're on the topic of social media, during the few weeks leading up to the election, I saw a lot of stories being posted, in support of Donald Trump, further spreading rumors and allegations against Clinton and the email scandal and all that bullshit. But every single one of those stories that I saw came from a bullshit source, like a source that was funded by white supremacists or the Klan, or some, completely lunatic source, but they were being passed along as facts.
The story was completely overshadowing any thought of skepticism about the source. That's another thing that pisses me off, is that whenever somebody brings up that a source is dubious, then right away it's like, oh, now you're just trying to dodge the issue by attacking the source.
Right. I got a lot of flack for doing that. Like I called the source out on what it was, and I got shot down, like you were just saying. Well, now you're just going after the source, saying it's not credible. Well, it isn't. It's not a credible source.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was an interesting few weeks, and I think you're right. Fake news did probably have a lot to do with him being elected.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about how much Russia, quote unquote, hacked the election. While I don't think there's any evidence to say that they hacked the actual vote tallying machines.
Yeah, what are they saying there? Like, what is it
think
exactly that happened with the hacking? Because I've never heard anything about what it actually entailed or anything like that.
Just so what I think it is that they actually did have a coordinated kind of psyops campaign or operation.
What is a psyops?
Psyops is just propaganda, basically. Okay. It's just the idea of trying to shape public attitudes by putting manipulating information, putting things out there that make people kind of go, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that, or I still don't know it. I'm just, now I think it. Right. Because I've been told this is a fact. But all of these sites that were just like popping up from Macedonia, where they trace back the IP addresses to Macedonia, and it's like these sites you've never heard about, but suddenly have articles that sort of have a clear bias. And you'll even have sites that are sort of imitating credible or mainstream news outlets, things like abc.com.co, where it imitates a mainstream news outlet, but when you look at the URL, you can see that it's actually like coming out of Colombia, which I think is the .co there.
Okay.
And ABC doesn't operate out of Colombia.
Right.
I hate to break it to people. Yeah. So I think it's not so much like a one-to-one direct brainwashing that they pulled. I think they just managed to influence just enough of the right kind of media consumers. And so sharing all of these kind of fake articles on social media was effective because it was reaching the kind of people who cared just enough about the news or about politics to be using Facebook as their source.
Right. The easily malleable.
Right.
The socially easily malleable.
And so they're the ones that aren't as invested in one or the other of the party, which are usually pretty much settled long before the election ever happens, right? But then you get all these kind of casual members of the electorate. You know, they'll do their civic duty maybe of going to vote, but they're not invested in politics, right? So to them, if you just give them some pieces of information that they can use to justify one bias or one prejudice or another, or that they can use just to just make up a bias on the spot, then I think that's effective enough. I mean, the polling, while it always showed that the chances of Hillary winning over Trump were like 90% to 10%, they were still also reporting that the actual numbers were just consistently that she was just a few points ahead of him. Right?
People needed to go out and vote.
It was more like 48 to 52 kind of thing. So I think it's easy for people to sort of dismiss the idea that Russia hacked the election because they're kind of pretending that this one country managed to brainwash 90% of America apparently to vote for the other side, but that's clearly not what anybody's arguing. Mm-hmm. You know, all they're arguing is that there was just enough of a nudge of those people in nearer to the middle that could kind of go either way, that managed to swing the election in the right places where the electoral votes mattered.
There's no way in hell that Russia was able to influence 90% of the American population, right? No. What they were able to do was influence the amount of people necessary to go out and vote for Trump for him to win.
Yeah.
That's what, like, to their credit, the far right was very good at manipulating fake news and propagating it across social media in order to reach that audience. They did their homework, and they were able to do that very effectively. Like if you look at Breitbart, for example, again, a lot of the bullshit stories that I was seeing came from them specifically, or one of their affiliates. You know, they had a network of sources putting out all these fake stories that, you know, were obviously in support of Trump and were trying to influence the audience to vote for their candidate. Like, they were very, very good at that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think combating that kind of thing is going to become more important.
They've always been a lot better at messaging, and coming out with like pithy little like catchphrases and things like that are easily memeable. Mm-hmm. You know, things like "lock her up" or "crooked Hillary." Just that,
or
that little phrase, or Killary.
It's true.
Like there was nothing like that was put out, other than that like embarrassing attempt at the debates when Hillary said "trumped up, trickle down," and she was all proud of it.
And they're very good at jumping on memeable things coming from the opposition, like the gang of deplorables. You know, they were quick to turn that around in their favor.
Yeah.
Right, and they wore that as a badge of pride after it exploded, despite the fact that the Google search term for the word deplorable skyrocketed after she said it because no one knew what it meant. Which I found funny. Uh-huh. But yeah, like they're a well-oiled propaganda machine, and that's something that, like I said, that we'll have to fight. It'll be increasingly important to combat that kind of thing going forward.
And there's the problem. The problem there is that the well-oiled propaganda machine is very easily gonna be able to call it out when the other side is doing it or is getting better at it,
right.
They're just going to call them hypocrites, right?
Yeah, there was another article that came out in The Guardian kind of addressing that same issue. I'm just going to quote from the last paragraph in that. Quote, "As usual, the left and center, myself included, are beating ourselves up about where we went wrong. There are plenty of answers, but one of them is that we have simply been outspent. Not by a little, but by orders of magnitude. A few $1 billion spent on persuasion buys you all the politics you want." I think that's completely accurate. Like a lot of this fake news stuff is coming out of organizations that are being funded by massive corporations or artificially created think tanks and lobby groups in the U.S. They have a lot of money, and the more money you have, the easier it is to control the message.
So can we even equate money with untrustability?
Well, I don't think that's sense, too much of a stretch.
Like that in a sense, as soon as money is involved in some sort of exchange, credibility is completely lost.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking of like the Canadian Food Guide, right down to that, where I've spoken to the people that were part of organizing this thing, and according to them and their research on human health, they were going to suggest we needed like not that much meat and not that much dairy, but no, the industry could not have it, and so the food guide is a lie. It's a blatant lie. We don't need to eat that much meat. We don't need to eat that much dairy, that type of thing, because it was money oriented. Yeah. So as soon as money comes into play, nothing can be trusted. Like in a sense, we could associate lack of money with integrity, possibly. No.
Well, but the problem is, as soon as you adopt that kind of heuristic, right? Like a shortcut that you say, okay, I've got like this little tool that I can use to quickly suss out what's good and what's bad. I can just say if there's a lot of money in it, then it's automatically bad. If you do that, then you kind of open yourself up to being tricked by someone like Trump, who says I didn't need any donors. I'm completely self-funded and all of this, and so I'm not the corrupt one. But clearly that's a dishonest presentation of the state of affairs, right? I mean, there was plenty of money going around. It just wasn't directly donated to his campaign. All kinds of media outlets were just giving free publicity, and that's when they're not out and out giving positive publicity to Trump, like big media outlets like Breitbart and stuff like that. Like those should technically be considered campaign donations, right? But they're not going to be counted that way.
Right.
They're going to pretend that he had no campaign donations.
Well, here we're just talking about loopholes and ways to manipulate it once again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think, it's a given that the media cannot operate on subscriptions alone, right? So they have to take corporate sponsorships, and they have to take that kind of money. But if they're putting out a piece, then I think they need to be a lot more transparent about why they're putting that piece out and who's paying for it.
So transparency would be something that would lead to trustability, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
Like in terms of science, is it not the case that if you have you're meant to present your bias within the project or whatever you're working on or kind of thing?
Of course.
That's part of the equation.
Yeah. And I think
full disclosure.
Yeah, full disclosure. And this comes back to another problem that we see when it comes to scientific studies, is that some corporations will buy scientists to put out bullshit studies. And John Oliver did a fantastic piece on this during his show. We'll post a link to that in the description here. But corporations will buy out scientists to publish a study that supports the corporation's end goal, right? The same can be said about politicians. They can buy, when it comes to climate change, for example, they will buy studies from the minority of scientists who disagree that climate change is an actual thing that needs to be addressed now before we kill our planet, it's happening all the damn time, despite the fact that 97% of climate scientists are in complete agreement about the issue. the Trump administration will shut down climate scientists because we have this one study that says it's fake.
Mm-hmm.
That's complete.
We have a fake paper that says everything else is fake.
Like the autism thing.
Right.
It's vaccines cause autism. That has been debunked countless times.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Innumerable times. It's been like the scientist who led the original study linking autism to vaccines himself retracted his study.
Did he say why he said that? Was there any?
Remember.
No,
I can't remember, but yeah, like he admitted it was complete bullshit.
I hear actually vaccines cause autism now, or vice versa.
What?
Autism causes vaccines?
What?
Never mind.
Autism causes vaccines.
Well, we should lead a study on that one. Way to derail a
Actually, I'm not too sure. I think I heard a rumor that Trump has
Mm-hmm.
approached that guy, the guy who did the study linking vaccines to autism.
Really?
He's spoken to him about possibly playing a role in his administration.
Does that surprise?
No, because
we need more liars.
Just before the inauguration, Trump set up a committee to study the safety of vaccines, which is completely useless because vaccines they're safe and they don't need a committee to study that. It's already it's fine. Vaccines are fine. Vaccinate your kids. Don't.
Well, this is how we got rid of polio and all the diseases that would otherwise have killed us. We need vaccines.
Oh, great! He set up a new committee. At least we won't be seeing
as this meme has been spreading. Actually, we've seen a resurgence of a lot of diseases that had been eradicated for decades,
right?
Until now, because so many people are buying the bullshit.
Polio is coming back. Polio? What? Why is polio a thing again?
Well, I'm always surprised that these things continue to exist. There are cases of the plague and stuff like that. In the States, I remember a kid going to, I believe it was Yellowstone National Park, and contracted the plague there from
It's probably because he wasn't vaccinated. But no, in isolated circumstances, you'll see the occasional case spring up, right? But the reason why we're not seeing more of that is because vaccines work.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we're not seeing smallpox in large segments of the population. It's why we're not, now we're seeing polio again, but it's why we're not seeing people en masse dying from things like polio.
Yeah.
It's because, or rubella,
and
or
it's a complex thing. The medical science of vaccination. It's not like a one-to-one, like you put on this waterproof suit and there's no water that's going to get to you. Herd immunity is the thing there. So you vaccinate everyone so that if somebody contracts the disease, which is still possible even though you're vaccinated, if there's some kind of a mutation or your own body somehow didn't process the vaccine, or your immune system didn't quite react to the vaccine as would be normal, then at least you're limiting the spread of it because everyone around you is vaccinated. Right. So,
makes sense.
So, but people tend to want to think of it as, I got vaccinated, so I should never get sick, things
aren't that solid. In reality.
Yeah.
It's true. We tend to we want to think that things are very, very solid, and if I do this will happen,
right?
Or this won't happen, which is not the case.
No, virtually nothing is.
It's all about mutations. That's what being is mutating continuously.
And one of the things that people, or the anti-vax movement, jumps on is the list of ingredients in vaccines. Oh my God, it contains mercury. Mercury is poison, therefore vaccines are bad. Okay, well, it's an isotope of mercury that dissipates within 10 days of entering the body, right? As opposed to the other isotope of mercury, which is actually poisonous. The stuff they used to have that caused the Mad Hatter thing to become part of our vernacular.
You're talking about people that don't understand science and are therefore afraid of science.
Sure, yeah. It's easy to be afraid of things you don't understand, right?
Yeah.
If you don't understand vaccinations, please consult your doctor, consult a scientist if you can get a hold of a medical scientist or whatever. Just try to understand what it is you don't understand so that you're not freaking out about it. Now, the more you know about a subject, the better off you'll be.
But let me ask you: do you trust doctors? Because I see doctors as drug peddlers. I mean, that is often their agenda, right? Is to get you on drugs and stuff like that, especially when we're dealing with mental illness and stuff like that. You know, they really just want to throw you on drugs.
I think it's more of an issue in the States than it is
for sure.
Like Canada.
We're more regulated here than they are in the States when it comes to doctors being bought off by big pharma.
Yeah.
It's a problem in the U.S. You know, all these like medical conferences where doctors are being treated to lunch by representatives from big pharmaceutical companies so they can peddle these drugs to people. You know, you see it all the time on American TV. The commercials like, ask your doctor if you have trouble sleeping, get Ambien or whatever, you know. That's coming from a lack of regulation because in the U.S. people are afraid of regulation. They don't like laws. They don't like being told what to do by the government. They're all about, you know, how is that going to affect me? I don't want the feds coming in and telling me how to live my life. Dang it.
This is a good American
But I mean,
accent.
that's the ironic thing. They don't like being manipulated or dictated to by the government, but they're fine, or they ignore the fact that they can be manipulated, and they are manipulated by private industry. You know, by
so they want it well hidden. They don't want to know about it.
But do you think
manipulation?
Do you think
weird. Just because one is overt and one is covert, it doesn't mean that the overt one is worse than the covert one. Actually, I would think it's the opposite, and I think that might actually.
Well, that was my question. Do you think people in the U.S. are more likely to trust industry or corporations as opposed to their government?
Yeah, in the States, I think that's the case. At least
they're more likely to trust industry.
To trust industry, yeah, because to them it's. I think that it comes out of like the American dream, right? The idea that this is just a private citizen who has become successful and built a company. You know, he's producing something for the world, and so there's sort of a mythical kind of nobility or something to that. Whereas in the government, it's all just about manipulation, and they don't necessarily see that it's producing something of its own, you know, which is you know, things like stability and safety. Or
well, I think that's pretty telling due to the fact that the Americans elected a billionaire business tycoon as opposed to a lifelong career politician. And that right there, I think that's pretty telling of what it is you're trying to get across.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to lionize that other side either. I don't want to say that because I mean, Hillary was also clearly a neoliberal. I mean, she was on the board of Walmart and everything. She was clearly like a pro-business liberal, but she still she still had a sort of a professional paradigm that she was working under, which included the public service part of her career, right? And so that definitely colored her enough to make her sensitive to that side of the issue, to the public interest side of the issue and the public service side of the issue. And that's something that's just utterly lacking from the basically perfect oligarch that you have in Donald Trump, right? There's like zero element of appreciation for
life.
Sure. Civics, public service, yeah. The kind of non-profitable.
Yeah, right. It's all about profit.
Yeah.
It's a business. He's a business. And he's set to run the states like a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very much.
Okay, so speaking in terms of news sources, do you guys go to a news source that you do trust? Like, because I sort of look at them all and trust none of them at this point. And I guess I'm really just reading it and at this point not knowing what could possibly be true in terms of news.
But you know what? To some extent, I think that's a sought after result, right? That kind of, they want whoever's not just out and out buying one particular side of the bias that they would want you to have. They're also just as happy to sow paralysis, by saying, oh, well, everybody's biased, so none of it is trustworthy. So I would say that the idea is to look at a variety of sources and hopefully look at opposing sources or
and then conclude from there.
And then sort of try and build up in your mind a synthesis of.
Okay, so for example, you watch a Roger Moore documentary, which is biased, but probably a bias leaning towards what we would possibly believe being the people that we are. Michael Moore, is that what I said? Did I Roger Moore? So you're watching a James Bond movie.
Documentary about
okay, so right, Roger Michael Moore.
The third favorite James Bond actor.
So we're looking at Michael Moore movie, right? We're watching it, we love it, we think it's great.
Yeah.
But it is biased. Like, it's not really,
yeah.
It's part documentary, but it's mostly about Michael Moore presenting his ideas that we agree with and we like, right? But you don't then go out and watch some opposing documentary after that, do you?
No, I'm kind of thinking more about the sources of information that's not presenting itself as an emotional appeal. The ones that try to say that they are actually a
presenting
news source.
Okay, I see.
Those ones you want to get sort of a mix, I think, of. You want to go and look at a mix of different ones. You want to go to the New York Times, and then you want to check out what Breitbart might be saying, maybe, and then you go to, I don't know, the BBC, or you kind of build like a cloud of different sources.
A cloud.
Yeah.
It's funny because we're talking about news and informing ourselves, yet it's all extracted from a cloud. Just going over our faces so we see less and less.
But I mean,
fog.
But I mean, not all these sources can be measured as equal either. Some of them really do objectively stick to a certain set of rules that are probably even visible or demonstrable within a single article, right? Like things like naming, talking about where they got the information from and how credible it is, and where this kind of stuff. If people just gloss over where this information was gleaned from, then you can much easier just discount that one or put less weight on it than
right, like evaluating an essay. Like, where did you get your sources? What are your sources? And name your sources, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just talking.
That's it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm reading a news article online, for example, I'm more likely to that doesn't come from a traditional media source. It's just some random article I see online. I'm more likely to believe it if it has links throughout the article that point to different sources, which in turn point to other sources that kind of corroborate what it is this article is saying. Because
well, immediately we're more likely to believe what we already believe, and that's probably why we're reading it in the first place. Am I right? No, like we're already going off on our tangent, even looking like we've already created the bias looking at what we're looking at because we've chosen to look at it.
Well, the funny thing is, I think a bigger problem is the headlines, which are often not even written by the person who wrote the article under the headline.
Sort of like trailers and movies, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So the headlines, I think, are a bigger problem than the articles themselves because sometimes the articles themselves they have less latitude not to do the work that's required to be able to call yourself a legitimate article, right? Or to call yourself a legitimate journalist. You have to produce something that shows you have an education in journalism, and you're ticking off all the boxes, right? When you produce a credible article. When you're writing a headline, you can just make something up whole cloth and prick at the emotions and the biases and the prejudices there. And if you can insert just enough information in there that people confirm something in themselves, it confirms a bias or something like that, then they might not necessarily even read the article. So I almost think that the headlines are a bigger concern than the articles.
Well, there, I guess the concern isn't necessarily the headline, but that people don't actually look into things.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, it's the actual person doing the reading there that they're captured by such a primitive thing.
I guess the idea is that if a headline sounds too good to be true because it really sticks it to the people you want sticking to, or it sounds like bullshit or sensationalist, then your skepticism should be heightened, and you should be like, wait a minute, but I don't know, maybe that's just setting yourself up so that benign headlines are just taken as truth. More subtle headlines might be taken less skeptically.
So in a post-truth world where facts are becoming less and less important, what do you think the future of journalism or the media holds?
Well, I think we can just reject this. I think there's a problem with just legitimizing the idea of the post-truth era. Mm-hmm. Like, people seem to be taking it as a fait accompli, and this is the world we live in now.
Truth doesn't exist anymore. That's
right.
It. That's it. That's all.
I mean, if I read like the Oxford Dictionary, they've already got an entry
there
for post-truth.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they call it. They describe it as an adjective relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief.
Well, if we can backtrack for just a second here, like, how did we come to the point where people have become so accepting of that as a thing? Like, where was the turning point where people started to accept, well, this is it, facts don't matter anymore? Like, what?
It's ever since I can remember, like, people have some people have managed to discount just the concept of statistics altogether.
That has always bothered me.
Yeah, like they say that statistics can be used to show absolutely anything you want, or
well, sure. In manipulating the survey or whatever it is itself, sure, you can manipulate the answer out of the person by wording it differently. And
that reminds me of that one quote from The Simpsons where Homer's on with Kent Brockman is like, "Oh, Kent, you can use facts to prove anything."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's
like,
true.
Like that age-old adage, the lies, damn lies, and statistics. I think that's like a super simple kind of cynical, facetious thing, maybe, but they can be defended too in terms of like a rigorous accounting of their methodology and the source of their data and how the data was collected. There's things that you can just, like, if you just scratch the surface, you can see whether a study is bullshit and made up whole cloth, or whether there's some meat behind it, whether it's something that holds some information in there that can be useful, that can be trusted.
Do you think there's anything that we can do at this point to reintroduce trust in scientific, evidence-based, rational, evidence-based policymaking, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think at this point there's something that people at large or the media itself can do to reintroduce that kind of trust?
You were talking about before what got us to this point, and it could be that in presenting, let's say the news was more real before, perhaps it's, in a sense, what we did with the world anyways that led us to, well, that's not working, we might as well be fucking lying then, you know what I mean? Like, maybe it is that we didn't do anything of any quality with telling the truth, and so people are, like, it's this Hegelian sort of swinging the pendulum, well, we might as well go to the other extreme then, because this side didn't work, so we might as well just be fucking lying now, at this point. Because it didn't work, so maybe it's coming from a deep-seated dissatisfaction with the world and stuff like that, right? At this point, it's perhaps economically based. People are scared now. in terms of losing money and not having enough money because the economy is going downward and stuff like that. So it's probably just stemming from economics and looking at the past and not being satisfied, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. It's tough. I'm not sure that there is a way to stop to stem what's the trend.
Right. Yeah. No, I was looking at a possibility. Because I don't think there's any way of knowing this is where it started. This is what it started with. You can't really trace.
Well,
you could, but
we might not be able to trace the catalyst, but certainly at some point there should be some kind of indication of the swing in the pendulum, as you called it. Like at some point in history, it might be recent history, or it could be going back even further than that, but there has to be some kind of indication of the turn in public opinion against what I call evidence-based policymaking. And trust in statistics and trust in science. Like where did that slowly start to occur?
Yeah, to me, it's totally confounding, actually, that with climate change, for example, people could in any way find the brazenly vested interest of the fossil fuel industries manufactured kind of fake studies and fake information versus the broader just school of or the consensus of climatologists, right? Like these are people that are just gathering data and then conducting analyses and then making models or not based on the data. It seems to me that those kind of conclusions that are coming more directly from what the scientists are just doing versus ones that are filtered through a very clearly vested interest. I don't know how someone can pick the latter over the former.
I don't know either.
And it's maybe irreconcilable. I think it might just be that some people are more comfortable with just going with their gut. They like the big business tycoons more than the ivory tower academics more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Could it be as simple as the internet has opened the spectrum of truth? Like we're relying now not on the newspaper and going home and watching the TV, but now the internet, which is chaos. Like everything is said on the internet, and you can find whatever you want there. So truth disappears in that sense.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to sow confusion. Do you guys know that documentary maker Adam Curtis? He makes like these BBC documentaries, and he was on this BBC show called Newswipe, I think, and he was talking about what was it called? Jeez, I'm blanking. So let's just move on from there. But he was talking about a big kind of new industry that's coming up, which is about deliberately sowing confusion. So if you can't just put out propaganda for your side,
create
and
confusion.
Make it believable.
There is a documentary
confusion
about that, I believe. Yeah, I can't remember what the documentary's called, but it's focusing on the people that were hired to cause confusion online and stuff like that.
It's kind of like a scorched earth policy. Like if you can't,
exactly.
If you can't sow the seeds of your idea, then just blast it until there's nothing left, and everyone is left scratching their heads and not knowing what to believe. I think that'll become a growing industry for people who are, after that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of a sad state of affairs when it comes to the media. But, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to put a hopeful note on
I wish we
on
could
the end of the
yeah. I
of
wish
the
we could end it a
subject.
little bit more.
Well, in general, though, I
hopeful.
think it's always seemed to be a thing that when we look forward, it seems doomed. But like every past generation has felt that, and maybe I can't believe that things are actually.
I don't know. This seems a little bit more tangible than the doom and gloom sayers of days of yore.
Yeah, now we know it's doom. Now.
Well, we don't know, but like it's I don't know. It's just more, I guess, present. Again, because of the internet, I think what we're seeing a lot more of the outside world just beyond our little bubble of reality, right? And that's, I think, why people are starting to feel more and more like, well, this is, things are more fucked up than they used to be, just because we're being exposed to how fucked up things are.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think that, for example, we're how would I put it? Like less civilized. Like I do think things are getting better.
It's like it's like the idea that there needs to be more emphasis on law and order and tougher sentencing and stuff because crime is rampant. When you actually look at the hard numbers, violent crimes has been steadily declining for
and that's not due to harder
years.
Sentences.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with that.
There's almost like an inversely
there's an inverse ratio to hard sentencing versus the decline of crime overall, But I think it was Newt Gingrich who was being interviewed on CNN. He was being presented with that fact. He's like, well, I don't care what the numbers show. I feel that crime is on.
I don't care what facts say.
There's a post-truth statement there.
I don't care what the facts say. I feel that crime is on the uprise. Well, it doesn't matter how you feel about it.
Is it not viable then maybe for like the industry of journalism to actually include now in its procedures, along with fact checking and all this kind of stuff, also have calling out a blatant post-truth statement, like a blatant appeal to emotion and disregarding of facts, and maybe there should be just if the industry can kind of create a consensus for itself, that would make it more viable for them to be able to call out like transgressions like that.
In order for someone to call someone out and be able to call someone out, they would have to have nothing that they can themselves be called out upon. Like they themselves would have to have integrity as well. But I think the problem there is that most things can be called out. Like there is no one that's safe from being called out, because as soon as you're in any industry, money's involved, you're basically full of shit. Like these news channels are getting paid, and just like scientists are being paid. Like they need to do what they're told to do because that's how they get the money to even do what they're doing. Like everything is destroyed not by money but by what we've done with money. It seems. Like I hate to blame a thing. It's not a thing. It's what we've done with that thing. Things in and of themselves aren't good or bad. It's what we're doing with these things that's terrible.
Yeah, like if you use the example of science in itself is benign or neutral. Is a more better way.
It's a collection of patterns. We're collecting patterns.
Yeah.
So
Science is a method, and it's what we do with that method that determines the outcome. Like we were saying earlier, corporations buying scientists to put out bullshit studies. That's one use of the tool.
Yeah.
But among the general scientific community, the understanding is to use it for the betterment of our understanding. But to tie that to journalism, I think, Gilles, what you were saying, having some kind of I want to say filter or some kind of
checklist kind of thing.
Like checks and balances to ensure that we're calling out people who deserve to be called out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems to me that it might be easier in print. You can quote somebody and then right after give some context around that quote. Like he said this despite the fact that we know this to be 100% false. Mm-hmm. When you're in an interview, it might be less comfortable to call out someone directly, but if you had some kind of a framework set up where a journalistic outfit could be penalized for not calling out an untruth, like something blatant, then you could get them to kind of self-police. Then I don't know.
Given President Trump's, I hate using that term.
I think I don't want to call him President Trump. I've committed to calling him the Republican president for the next 4 years at least.
I don't even want to go that far. He's not really a Republican. But
I think this guy is an obvious narcissist, and to erase his name because. A lot of people think that he's just doing this to build his brand, right?
Well,
like he intends to just let his vice president and whoever he nominates just run everything while he just continues
showcasing himself,
twittering and showcasing himself and building his brand up, making more connections, making more conflicts of interest for himself.
No, I completely agree with that.
So if you commit to calling him the Republican president, then you erase his name and you kind of disarm his pretense of being against the establishment, and you're just saying this is a Republican president. You know?
No, I completely agree with you. Well, all I'm saying is that he's not really a Republican.
Okay, well,
but hold on now.
I'm not sure he's not really a Republican.
I don't know. It doesn't seem. He's more of a. I don't even know. He's beyond description. But the question I was leading up to was, given his obvious disdain for the media, do you think we're going to see kind of a muzzling of journalists going forward?
I think we'll see a general muzzling.
Yeah,
Science, unless whatever's against him, really. You know?
Unless journalists can find a way to band together and overcome the competitive business part of it to some extent. If there can be sort of an industry standard that's established early on, I think he won't be able to do as much damage with the muzzling as he might want. You might be able to stem some of that damage, but I think I don't know how easy it would be or likely it would be for the industry to be able to do that.
The idea that I love, though, with this new Republican president is this idea that I think of it in terms of a Hegelian thing where presenting, so let's say he's evil.
Yeah.
It will bring out good in other people. Like, people will see that and go, oh, God, like, we've got to do something about this. And
I think
so it might up the ante on the media to go, okay, we've got to fucking start telling the truth now. You know?
Well, I think you're 100% right on that. Like, just looking to yesterday's Women's March, the amount of people who showed up to that, not just in the U.S. but around the world. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, he's going to bring out that urge to defend what people believe to be right. Because they see a rise of what they consider to be evil, and they want to do something about it.
Yeah, they want to confront it.
Yeah,
for sure.
At the same time, I think it's easy to underestimate just how much more bottom there is. You know what I mean? Like rock bottom. You might think you're at rock bottom, but somebody recently had quoted. Apparently, there's an old Russian expression that says. You might think you've hit rock bottom, but then suddenly you'll get a knock from below.
It's true, yeah. I would interpret the bottom to not be rocks, but mud that you can just keep on sliding deeper and deeper into. There ain't no rocks at the bottom. Yeah. We're all expecting rocks, and so we can bounce back up. But no, we're actually just going to sink deeper and deeper and deeper, and we can. You're right.
Yeah, on the flip side of what we were just saying, while we're going to be seeing an upswing in people wanting to defend the good, we're also going to see the bad come out really fast.
Yeah.
We've already started with that.
But like, look at just the example of World War II, and like the unprecedented stretch of peacetime that happened after World War II. You had things like the UN be built. with diplomatic relations kind of happening on a level that's never been seen before in the world. So you do have that kind of reaction that you might be able to count on, but at the same time, I guess I would worry about like these people that are like saying they voted for Trump so that they could watch it all burn down and so that something new could be built up in its place, kind of thing. You
like
know,
this iconoclastic, like let's destroy first so that we can build it.
Like the Brexit voters.
Sure,
right.
It's very Nietzschean. Love it.
Yeah, or like the Fifth Element, where with Gary Oldman's character, he's like, look at this teacup, look at all the work that it creates as I smash it.
That's
You know, like we don't want to be that villain, right? But it seems like that villain is actually starting to become a hero in many people's minds.
Which often happens in the horror movies, that's for sure. You know, we start loving the villains. You basically put out one Nightmare on Elm Street movie, he's the villain. Then all the rest, he's the comedian hero. All of a sudden,
everybody friggin' loves Freddy. Yeah.
On that note, I don't know what can be done about restoring the media's popular image with people. I wish we could end this on a more hopeful tone, but I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do.
Well, I think that we are ending somewhat on a happy note here. That whole idea of the pendulum swinging, that good things can come out of bad things. It can open people's eyes and force us to now see and get us out of our slumbery sleep of just letting things pass. You know, like we can now become maybe more socially conscious and. You know, hey, maybe pay attention to politics.
But I think it takes some work to make sure that pendulum swing, when it swings back from the dark place, make sure it just swings a little bit further.
Well, yeah.
You know, then it swung back. You know, you want to go.
We don't want to.
You want to go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You don't want to.
We don't want to return to the status quo. We want to go beyond that and move forward as best as possible, I think.
Yeah,
as difficult as it might seem at the time, I don't know.
And I don't know. I think there is progress in society. I don't think.
Oh, for sure. Like we're in.
Okay, I don't think we're going back to slavery.
Progress. Okay, yes. So social, like what we deem good socially, there's progress.
Sure. Yeah, I think there is.
I think so too. Like in the sense
that I'm an idealist that way.
I guess so too. Yeah, maybe I am as well. But yeah, I feel like. We would not have the luxury of doing this podcast unless things were good. Like things are good.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
the 30s were the Depression, and we would not have been able to own anything to talk into to record. You know?
Yeah.
We would be out there struggling for food and stuff like that.
Despite how shitty things are in a lot of places and in a lot of circumstances, things are also really, really good. Like we've been making huge leaps forward scientifically and socially and collectively. It's just sometimes those things get overshadowed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're experiencing at the moment. And not to like take away from all the fucking bad things that are happening, because those things are fucking bad, but at the same time, there are things that we can kind of cling to.
Clinging to things, eh?
Grasping at straws.
Grasping at straws.
That's our high note.
There we go.
That's our high note. Clinging to things.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Let's end it with clinging and grasping at straws, hoping to
find out who gets the short one.
Any parting words, gentlemen?
No. I mean, just stay vigilant. As much as it's an inconvenience, maybe just take a few seconds extra to look at your sources and to think about what you're reading. Look past the headline.
I'm gonna suggest don't lie yourself. Be good.
Let's go back to thinking. Let's go back to thinking that honesty is a virtue rather than a liability.
I like
who came up with truth is a virtue? Who gets credited with that line? Like, which ancient Greek philosopher would that be?
This is a quiz. Do you know the answer to that?
Would it be Aristotle? Maybe.
I'm thinking probably Aristotle. Yeah. I'm not sure. Would it be Plato? It could even be Socrates. Truth is
if anyone knows the answer to that question, post it in the comments.
It could be Socrates. It could be Socrates.
Could be Socrates.
I think so.
Yeah,
Socrates was about like the Socratic method, which is
yeah,
more about like testing your
truth
assumptions
as a
of
virtue.
what's true. Yeah, let's bring back the Socratic method. That's a good a good thing for countering the post-truth
I like
era.
that. That's a good point.
It's I think that a lot of things are taken as new, uncharted territory when actually it's so not new. It's so same old.
It is same old.
And
like the Greeks did it first. No matter
it's
what it
just
is,
remembering
the Greeks did it
that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are ideas that have been or problems that have been thought about and.
Did you know that Socrates refused to write things
devised.
down because he felt like then it became like it was basically a disease to write things down because then it wasn't continuing? That's why he enjoyed conversation. He didn't want to write things down. He felt that was illness in a sense.
Maybe we can save this for the post show.
Post show.
All right, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up. This has been Critical Junction episode 8. I'm Mark.
I'm also Mark. No, I'm Luke. I'm trying to think of something funny. Sorry.
I'm Jill.
Okay. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.